"You deserve more than this, Linda," Chris murmured, his face close to hers. "Ayo doesn't see you the way I do." Linda closed her eyes, guilt mingling with the intense longing she felt. But as she met his gaze, her defenses crumbled. They shared a passionate kiss, and the world around her faded. Suddenly, the door creaked open and Linda pulled away, her heart sinking as she saw Ayo standing in the doorway. Shock and pain etched across his face. "Ayo," she whispered. "Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video." It was about 7 p.m. that night. Ayo and Linda sit across from each other at the dinner table, the clinking of silverware filling the silence. Ayo's eyes are glued to his phone, his mind lost in a project deadline, oblivious to Linda's gaze. "Ayo," Linda begins softly, hoping to break through to him. He glances up briefly, his eyes unfocused. "Never mind," she replies, dropping her gaze back to her plate. She stabs at her food, her mind swirling with loneliness. Ayo's attention drifts back to his phone, unaware of her frustration. Later that night, as Ayo retreats to his office, Linda lingers in the kitchen, her hand resting on her phone. She scrolls through her messages, pausing at Chris's name. After a moment of hesitation, she opens the chat and types, "Hey, it's been a while. Want to catch up?" Ayo and Linda have been married for about 7 months. Ayo, who is a software engineer, he gets to make a lot of money but also gets to work a lot. Even on their wedding night, he still had to write some codes to satisfy a client at the expense of his own happiness. Linda has complained a couple of times about his work-life balance, but Ayo will keep saying, "Soon, I will have time to relax, but right now, we have to work. Or how do you intend we make money to take care of our bills if I don't work this much?" Linda had no response, especially due to the fact Ayo foots 80% of the bills. But you see, deep down, Linda was lonely. She craves attention and someone to keep her company. It's been 7 months of being married. How will she cope with a husband who has no time? These were her thoughts. That evening, as Ayo buried himself in his work, Linda met Chris at a small, cozy cafe. Chris had always been more than just a friend. He was someone who, years ago, had been there for her in ways Ayo never was. He'd always admired Linda, though he'd never voiced his feelings before. As they talked, Chris listened intently, his gaze never wavering from her face as she opened up about her struggles in her marriage. She talked about her art projects, her passions, and eventually, her frustrations. "Sounds like he's barely around," Chris said, his voice soft and smooth, laced with sympathy. "I mean, you deserve someone who sees you, you know, really sees you." Linda gave a soft, awkward laugh. "Ayo works hard. I can't blame him for wanting to provide for us." "Sure, but at what cost?" Chris leaned forward, his expression earnest. "You're more than just a fixture in his life, Linda. You're amazing. You shouldn't have to feel invisible." His words struck a chord in her. She hadn't realized just how invisible she'd been feeling until he'd pointed it out. Chris smiled, sensing her vulnerability. "Are you happy, Linda? Think about it. By this time of night, you two should be home, maybe watching a movie together, playing like lovebirds." He gave her a pointed look. "You've only been married for 7 months," Linda sighed, a heaviness settling over her. 7 months, 5 days, and 18 hours to be exact," she replied, her voice tinged with bitterness. "It's not been as much fun as I hoped." Chris called over the waiter, ordering drinks for both of them. As the conversation flowed, Linda felt her heart lift. Chris's jokes, his compliments, the warmth of his presence, it all felt like a balm to her lonely soul. By the time Linda and Chris said their goodbyes, she felt a strange warmth and excitement she hadn't felt in ages. As she walked home, Chris's words replayed in her mind, filling her with both longing and guilt. It was a bright morning at Tenny's stylish apartment. Tennyola, a 30-year-old dark-skinned social media influencer, sits by the window, sipping wine and scrolling through Instagram. She sees a recent photo of Ayo and Linda, smiling and posing in front of a candlelit dinner. The caption reads, "Even in the afterlife, I'd choose you all over again." Tenny's jaw tightens and a bitter laugh escapes her lips. Tenny, muttering, "Happy, are we? Must be nice." Just as she picks up her phone, planning to make a call, there's a knock on the door. She frowns, setting down her wine, and goes to open it. The door swings open to reveal Simsola, her best friend since childhood. They squeal and hug each other, their laughter filling the room. Simsola, "Surprise! I thought I'd check in on my favorite troublemaker." Tenny then replied, "Girl, you didn't even tell me you were coming back to town." They settle into the living room, catching up over drinks. Tenny's frustration bubbles up as she shares her feelings about Ayo. "Look at him, Simsola, Ayo Johnson, the love of my life. He was supposed to be mine." Simsola raises an eyebrow, surprised by the bitterness in Tenny's voice. "Tenny, that was years ago. He's married now. Let it go." Tenny, sighing, "Maybe I would have, if he'd left me for anyone else. But it was Linda. She was never even his type. And now she's flaunting it all over social media, like they're this perfect couple." Simsola glances at her friend with concern. "Tenny, are you seriously still hung up on him? You have a beautiful daughter, a thriving career. What else do you want?" Tenny leans back, crossing her arms defiantly. "Tenny, Ayo was different, and I think it's time he remembers what he's missing." Simsola's eyes narrow as she catches on to Tenny's intent. "Tenny, don't tell me you're planning something. You have a child now. Don't drag yourself and her through some revenge plot." Tenny, smirking, "Who said anything about revenge? I just want what's rightfully mine. I'll make him see he chose wrong." Simsola shakes her head, clearly unconvinced but aware that Tenny has already made up her mind. Weeks later, Chris and Linda meet at the same cozy bar. The lighting is warm and dim, casting a soft glow over them as they share drinks. Chris leans forward, his voice low and laced with empathy. "Linda, you deserve more than this. Ayo's always working. He doesn't even know what he has." Linda shifts uncomfortably, looking down at her drink. "It's not like that, Chris. Ayo, he's a good man. He works a lot. And you're left feeling invisible. That's not fair to you." Chris's hand finds hers on the table. She hesitates but doesn't pull away. "You're worth more than being someone's afterthought, Linda." Linda blushes, trying to ignore the warmth she feels from his touch. "You don't understand, Chris. Ayo, he's trying to build a life for us." Chris leans closer, his eyes piercing. "Chris, but at what cost, Linda? You've been married less than a year, and look at us. Here we are, talking as if, well, like he doesn't even exist." Linda sighs, taking another sip of her drink, Chris's words swirling in her mind. Meanwhile, at a nearby table, Simsola watches their interaction discreetly, recognizing Linda as Tenny's rival. Her eyes narrow as she observes Chris's charm, and Linda's reluctant smile. Simsola, thinking to herself, "Interesting. Very interesting." The night ends with Linda feeling both flattered and conflicted, Chris's words replaying in her mind as she heads home. It was late evening when Simsola dropped by Tenny's apartment, her expression one of hesitant excitement. Tenny greeted her with a raised eyebrow, noticing the glint in her friend's eyes. "What's got you so wound up?" Tenny asked, pouring them both a glass of wine. Simsola leaned in, her voice lowered. "You'll never believe who I saw the other night." Tenny tilted her head, intrigued. "Do tell." "Linda, Simsola said, and she wasn't alone. She was out with this guy. Handsome, a bit too familiar, if you ask me. Tenny's eyes widened slightly. Her interest peaked. Wait. Linda? With someone else? What were they doing? Simsola shrugged, enjoying the tension in her friend's expression. Having drinks, laughing, you know? Very close. He kept looking at her like he knew every word she needed to hear. Tenny leaned back, a slow smile forming as a plan took shape in her mind. Do you know who he was? No. But I have a feeling he's the kind of guy who wouldn't mind stirring up trouble, Simsola replied, a glint in her eyes. Might be worth looking into, don't you think? Tenny's smile widened as she contemplated the opportunity. Oh, I definitely think so. If Linda's already playing with fire, I'd be more than happy to fan the flames. Ayo and Linda's living room, early evening. The room is warmly lit, the TV screen casting a soft glow. A romantic movie plays in the background. As the movie progresses, Linda and Ayo are cuddled up on the sofa, sharing a bowl of popcorn. Linda's laughter fills the room, echoing the light-hearted scenes on screen. Linda, snuggling closer. I love this part. It always makes me think of our first date. Ayo, smiling. Yeah? Even with that disastrous rain? Especially with the rain. It was like something out of a movie. Just like this. Except we were the stars. Ayo chuckles, squeezing her hand gently. Those moments with you are my favorite. Ayo replied, I wish we could pause time. Linda leans her head on his shoulder, feeling content. Let's just pretend tonight that nothing else exists, no work, no calls, just us. Just then, Ayo's phone rings, shattering the moment. He glances at the caller ID. It's his boss. With a reluctant sigh, he pauses the movie and answers the call. Ayo, on phone. Yes, Mr. Daniels. Right now, but... He listens intently, his expression turning serious. Linda's face falls as she picks up on the urgency of the conversation. Ayo, still on phone. Understood. I'll be there as soon as I can. He hangs up and turns to Linda, his eyes apologetic. I'm so sorry, honey. There's an emergency at the server farm. I have to go. Linda, disappointed yet understanding. I know your job is demanding. It's just hard, you know. These moments are so rare for us. Ayo, gathering his laptop and documents. I know, and I'm really sorry. I promise I won't be long. Let's have breakfast together tomorrow. My treat? We can go to that new cafe you like. Linda, forcing a smile. I'd like that. Just be safe, okay? Ayo, always. I love you. Linda, love you more. Ayo leans in, kisses her forehead and then heads out, leaving Linda alone with the paused movie and their unfinished popcorn. As the door closes behind him, Linda sits back, her eyes lingering on the empty space next to her, her smile fading into a resigned sigh. She picks up the remote, hitting play, but her eyes are glassy, reflecting the flickering light of the TV but not seeing the movie. Tenny's meeting with an ad agency representative at a sleek office space. I need something specific. Can you run ads that target a single person? Agency rep. We can definitely narrow it down, yes. With our targeting tools, we can push ads based on behaviors, locations, and even device history. Who are we trying to reach? Tenny, smiling slightly. A close friend. He recently switched to a new device, so he'll be easy to track. I want him to see ads for DNA testing services. There's a clinic, DTI clinic. I want all the ads to feature them. Agency rep. Got it. We'll design the ad to focus on DNA testing for family confirmation. Tenny. Exactly. It's important that everything works as planned. Agency rep. No problem. We'll make it seem personalized yet subtle. If he sees it enough, it should become top of mind. How soon would you like this to go live? Tenny. By tomorrow, and keep it running for a few weeks. The next day, Tenny made a few calls and eventually tracked down Chris's details. She arranged to meet him at a quiet bar on the outskirts of the city, a place where secrets were kept and questions were rarely asked. Chris arrived, curious and slightly wary. Tenny was already there, sitting confidently in a corner booth, her sharp gaze trained on him as he approached. "You're Chris, right?" Tenny greeted him with a cool smile, gesturing for him to sit. Chris nodded, studying her. "And you're Tenny?" "That's right. I've heard you've been spending time with a certain Linda Johnson," Tenny said. Chris chuckled, his expression unreadable. "I guess word travels fast." "Apparently so," Tenny replied, leaning in, her voice low and calculated. "I have a proposal for you, Chris. Let's just say it's mutually beneficial." Chris raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "I'm listening." Tenny's smile turned cunning. "You see, Linda's marriage isn't exactly as perfect as it seems. And you've already planted seeds of doubt, haven't you?" Chris nodded slowly, a smirk forming on his lips. "She's not hard to reach. Lonely, frustrated. Perfect for a guy like me to help her out." "Good," Tenny replied smoothly. "Because I want you to keep her close, Chris. Make her question her choices. Encourage her to find happiness elsewhere." He laughed, the idea clearly appealing to him. "So you want me to break up their marriage?" "You are definitely a smart guy," Tenny responded. "But what's in it for me?" Tenny slid a thick envelope across the table. "Half now, the other half once they're done. Consider it an investment in your talents." Chris opened the envelope, his eyes lighting up at the sight of the cash. He looked up at Tenny, impressed, but "I don't understand. Why are you interested in the Johnsons? Let's just say Linda took something out of mine, and I want it back." Chris looked into Tenny's eyes and he said, "We have a deal. Ayo's apartment, late evening. Ayo is sitting on his couch, scrolling through Instagram, taking a quick break from work. Ayo scrolls through his feed, liking a few posts when an ad pops up on his screen. Ad text: DTI clinic, leading DNA testing services. Find peace of mind with a simple test. Ayo, frowning slightly, muttering to himself. DTI clinic, DNA testing. What is my business with DNA? He scrolls past, but the ad reappears a few minutes later. He considers it for a moment, but dismisses it with a shrug, returning to his work. A few days later, the ad reappears on his Instagram feed. Ayo, starting to feel a strange sense of familiarity. This again? I haven't even looked up anything about DNA tests. He clicks on the ad out of curiosity, which leads him to the DTI clinic's page with information about testing for paternity, ancestry, and health. Ayo, chuckling to himself. DNA testing? Strange. He shakes his head, scrolling away, but the thought lingers in the back of his mind. Over the following weeks, Chris's interactions with Linda grew more frequent, carefully designed to stoke her doubts and fulfill Tenny's plan. He played the role of the attentive friend, listening to her frustrations and validating her feelings. Each compliment, each touch, each subtle nudge was perfectly calculated. One night, Linda found herself at Chris's apartment after a few too many drinks. The warmth of his gaze, the gentle touch of his hand on hers, all of it made her feel valued in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. You deserve more than this, Linda, Chris murmured, his face close to hers. Ayo doesn't see you the way I do. Linda closed her eyes, guilt mingling with the intense longing she felt. But as she met his gaze, her defenses crumbled. They shared a passionate kiss, and the world around her faded. Suddenly, the door creaked open and Linda pulled away, her heart sinking as she saw Ayo standing in the doorway. Shock and pain etched across his face. "Ayo," she whispered, her voice trembling with regret. Ayo spent the night on his brother's couch, his mind a chaotic whirlwind of disbelief and hurt. His brother Tundai entered the living room early the next morning, noticing the deep lines of exhaustion on Ayo's face as he sat staring. Tundai sat down beside him, watching him carefully before breaking the silence. "Ayo, are you really sure you want to go through with this?" Ayo's gaze remained fixed. His voice was barely above a whisper, rough with pain, as tears flowed down his eyes. "She made her choice, Tundai. I walked in and there she was, with him, holding him so tightly. It's just so hard to believe. If anyone told me this would happen, I would disagree. I can't just unsee that moment. It hurts to see the one you love in the arms of another. What did I ever do to deserve this treatment?" As he continues sobbing, Tunde put a hand on his shoulder, trying to convey some sense of support. "I get it, I do. But, I don't know, maybe it was a mistake. People make mistakes, Ayo. I know it hurts, but are you really ready to just throw everything away?" It not even up to a year, Ayo's jaw tightened as he shook his head, his eyes glistening with anger and sadness. "Tunde, it wasn't just a mistake. This wasn't some accident. You should have seen them all loved up, even if it was just for a night. She chose someone else over me." She was happy in the moment, Tunde sighed, knowing how deeply Ayo valued loyalty. He could see his brother's pain, but he also sensed the lingering love Ayo still held for Linda. "Tunde, look, I know it's not my place, but maybe there's more to the story. Maybe she was lonely, or maybe she was drunk and needed company and the guy was taking advantage of her weakness." Ayo finally looked up, a flicker of frustration in his eyes. "I work hard to build a life for us, for her. And this is what I get in return? A betrayal? If that's her idea of love, then maybe we were never really meant for each other." Tunde leaned back, choosing his words carefully. "You see, love isn't always about understanding each other perfectly. Sometimes it's about working through the hardest things, even when it feels impossible. Don't rush into a decision you can't take back, bro." Ayo looked away, the weight of Tunde's words sinking in. He was ready to fill in for divorce, but his resolve didn't waver. "I don't know if I can ever forgive her, Tunde." Tunde sighed, giving Ayo's shoulder a squeeze. "Only you can answer that. But just think it through. Don't let anger make the decision for you." Ayo's expression softened, though the pain in his eyes remained. The two sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the situation pressing heavily on both of them. Ayo knew he had a choice to make, one that would change the course of his life forever. It was early morning when Ayo's phone buzzed with an unexpected message. Assuming it was another work notification, he reached over groggily until he saw the sender's name, Tenny. Confused, he opened the message to find a photo. In it, a young boy with warm eyes and a bright smile looked up at the camera. Beneath the photo, Tenny had written, "Meet Christian. He's been asking about his father." Ayo's heart pounded as he read the message, a whirlwind of questions flooding his mind. Why hadn't she told him sooner? Was this really his son? The image lingered in his mind, filling him with a strange mix of anxiety, fear, and dread. After a few minutes of hesitation, he replied, asking Tenny to meet him. They arranged to meet later that day at a quiet, tucked-away cafe. Just days ago, he'd discovered Linda's betrayal, and now he was being told he had a son he'd never known about. It all felt like too much to process. Tenny walked in, her smile warm as she approached him. She slid into the seat across from him, her expression a careful mix of sympathy and excitement. "Ayo," she greeted him softly. "Thank you for agreeing to meet." Ayo managed a nod, though his mind was still reeling. I don't even know where to start, Tenny. This is all so much." Tenny reached across the table, placing a reassuring hand on his. "I know, and I'm sorry for bringing this to you out of nowhere. I've wanted to tell you about Christine for a long time, but life got complicated. All this time, Tenny, and you never thought I had a right to know." Tenny sighed, her gaze dropping to her hands. "I know it was wrong to keep it from you, and maybe it sounds selfish, but I was scared. Back then, you were focused on your future. I didn't want to be the one to hold you back. I thought maybe I could handle it on my own." Ayo let out a heavy sigh, rubbing his temples. The conversation felt surreal, a storm of emotions swirling inside him. After a pause, he looked back up at her, his voice breaking slightly. "Tenny, you have no idea what I've been going through recently." He hesitated, glancing away as he struggled to keep his voice steady. "Just a few nights ago, I caught Linda cheating on me." After a pause, Tenny tilted her head, her voice curious, yet careful. "If you don't mind me asking, how did you find out?" Ayo's face darkened as he remembered the text he'd received. "Linda sent me the address herself," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I told her I was finishing work early, and she texted me, asking me to come pick her up. I didn't think much of it. I assumed she was at a friend's place." Tenny's brows shot up, genuine surprise flickering in her eyes, though she quickly masked it. "She sent you the address?" she asked, feigning disbelief. "That's strange. Why would she do that if she was with someone else?" Ayo shook his head, frustration lacing his voice. "That's what I can't figure out, Tenny. Was she trying to get caught? Or was this her way of ending things?" Tenny took a deep breath, her face softening as she reached out to him again. Maybe she was. Sometimes people don't know how to handle love, Ayo. They take it for granted. They push it away. Sometimes people have to lose something to realize what they truly had. Ayo's gaze dropped to his hands, his jaw clenched. "I thought we were building something real. That everything I was doing, all the work, was for us. I didn't realize she'd grown so distant." Tenny placed a comforting hand over his. "I know this is a lot to take in." Ayo looked down, his mind spinning with questions. Just days ago, his world had been shattered by Linda's betrayal, and now he was faced with the possibility of a son he'd never known. His heart ached with a mix of anger, sadness, and a strange sense of hope. Tenny watched him carefully, sensing his internal struggle. "Ayo," she said softly, her voice steady. "You've always been a good man, and Christian, he is a wonderful child. I know you'd make an amazing father." He sighed, the weight of everything pressing down on him. "I don't know, Teeny. I feel like my whole life is unraveling." Teeny gave his hand a reassuring squeeze. "Maybe this is a new beginning, Ayo. Maybe you don't have to go through this alone." For a brief moment, Ayo felt the warmth of her support, a steady presence amidst the storm of betrayal and confusion. But as Tenny's words lingered in the air, a subtle doubt crept into his mind. There was so much he didn't know, so many questions that still needed answers. In the quiet moment, he glanced up at Tenny, a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. Ayo then asked her, "I hope you don't mind if we do a DNA test to confirm if there is no mistake." "Not at all," Tenny responded. I certainly don't have anything to hide. It had been 2 months since Io had walked out of her life, leaving Linda in a haze of guilt and regret. In those 2 months, she'd barely recognized herself. Every day she questioned how everything had unraveled so quickly, how she had allowed herself to cross a line she couldn't uncross. The loneliness that once felt like a quiet ache had now become an unrelenting emptiness, a hollow reminder of the betrayal she'd inflicted. She had spent countless nights replaying her encounters with Chris, trying to understand how things had spiraled so far out of control. But no matter how much she reflected, the pieces didn't fit. The whole thing felt too calculated, too convenient. And every time she tried to reach out to Ao, she was met with silence, his anger and disappointment ringing louder than any words he could have spoken. Finally, unable to bear the weight of her confusion any longer, Linda decided to confront Chris. She messaged him and they arranged to meet at a small, secluded bar. When she arrived, Chris was already there, lounging casually at a corner booth, a smug smile on his face as if he'd been expecting this. Linda approached him, her expression hard, her voice sharp. "Chris, I need answers." Chris raised an eyebrow, smirking as he leaned back in his seat. "Linda, long time no see. Missed me already?" Linda clenched her fists, fighting to keep her composure. "Don't do that, Chris. Don't play games with me. I need to know, what all this?" He chuckled, shaking his head as if she'd asked a silly question. "What do you mean, Linda? You were lonely. I was there for you. Simple as that." "No!" she snapped, her voice trembling with anger. "It wasn't that simple, and you know it." Chris shrugged nonchalantly, his smirk widening. "Maybe it was. Or maybe you just wanted to feel seen. And I gave you that, didn't I?" Linda stared at him, her eyes narrowing. "So it was a game. All of it. And I was just... what? Some pawn in your little scheme?" Chris leaned forward, his voice dropping to a cold, cutting tone. "Yes, Linda, you were. Did you really think I cared? I only did it for the money." Linda felt her stomach drop, a wave of nausea washing over her. She could barely get the words out. "Money? What are you talking about?" Chris laughed, enjoying the shock on her face. "You don't get it, do you? A lady by the name Tenny paid me. She paid me well, actually. I was just doing my job." The room felt like it was spinning as Linda took a step back, her voice barely a whisper. "Tenny? Tenny paid you? This was all for her?" Chris shrugged, unbothered by her horror. "Look, I don't get involved in the why. All I know is that she wanted you out of the picture, and she was willing to pay a nice sum to make it happen."
Linda's mind raced, a sickening realization settling over her. "You both orchestrated everything? You exploited my loneliness? All to break up my marriage? You're disgusting." Her voice trembling with rage. "How could you do this?" Chris's face hardened, his smirk fading. "Don't act like you're some innocent victim, Linda. You made your choices. I didn't force you to do anything. All I did was hold up a mirror." Linda's hands trembled as she stared at him, tears welling up in her eyes. "You don't understand. I loved him. I was lonely. And you took advantage of that." Chris shrugged, rolling his eyes. "Save the drama, Linda. You wanted attention, and I gave it to you. You didn't care what it cost then, so don't start now." Linda shook her head, her voice choked with emotion. "You're a horrible person, Chris. You took everything I had and turned it into a weapon." Chris then replied, "Let's not pretend you didn't play your own part in this. You could have walked away at any time." Linda stepped back, her face pale, a mixture of anger, disgust, and sorrow in her expression. She realized the depth of her own complicity, the choices she'd made that had led her down this path, and the reality of the manipulation she'd fallen victim to. "I hope you enjoy the money, Chris," she said, her voice icy. With one last look of contempt, Linda turned and walked away, the weight of betrayal and regret pressing down on her. She knew now just how deeply she'd been manipulated, but she also knew she had to find a way to make things right. But who is Tenny, and why does she want her out of the picture so bad? After her failed attempts to contact AO directly, Linda decided she needed answers. Determined to understand the strange web of events that had led her here, she started digging. She reached out to mutual friends, anyone who might know more about the situation or provide a hint of what was really going on. Finally, her search led her to Tundai, AO's older brother. Linda hadn't spoken to Tundai in a long time, but she knew that if anyone had insight into Ayo's recent behavior, it would be him. She contacted him, and he reluctantly agreed to meet. They met at a quiet cafe, the air between them thick with tension. Tundai's expression was wary, guarded, as if he wasn't sure whether to be sympathetic or angry. "Thank you for meeting with me, Tundai," Linda said softly, her voice edged with desperation. "I know you don't owe me anything, but I need your help. I feel like there's something I'm not seeing, something about all this that doesn't make sense." Tundai studied her for a moment, then sighed, folding his hands on the table. "Linda, I don't know what you're expecting to hear, but Ayo's been through enough. He's finally moving on." Linda felt a pang in her chest at Tundai's words, but she pressed on. "I understand that, Tundai. I just need to know, there are things I can't explain, like how everything seemed to fall apart so suddenly. Have you heard of the name Tenny by chance?" Tundai's expression shifted, a flicker of realization crossing his face. He hesitated, as if debating whether to tell her the truth. "Linda, there's someone you should know about," he said slowly. "Her name is Tenny Yola. Tenny and Ao used to be together back in college. They were close, very close, but things didn't work out. After they broke up, she claimed she was pregnant, and recently she came back into his life with a boy she says is his son." Linda's eyes widened in shock, her heart pounding as she processed Tundai's words. A son," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. Tundai nodded, his gaze steady. "Yes, his name is Christine. Tenny reached out to Ao not long after you two separated. She showed up with a photo of the boy, claiming Ao was the father." The impact of this revelation left Linda reeling. The idea that Ao could have a son with another woman, that he was already being drawn into a new life, was almost too much to bear. "So, Ao believes her?" Linda managed, her voice trembling with disbelief. Tundai looked away, his voice quiet. "I don't know if he fully believes her, but he's taking it seriously. From what I can see, he's beginning to accept the idea. He's met Christine, and he's started to spend time with him. I think he's beginning to live in that reality." Linda's mind raced as she tried to absorb the full weight of what she was hearing. All along, she'd thought Ao's distance had been solely because of her mistake. But now she realized that there had been something much deeper pulling him away, something orchestrated from the outside. Who is this Tenny?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Tundai sighed, leaning back as he recalled the past. Tenny was Ayo's first serious relationship. She's determined, and she's always been ambitious. From what I understand, she's been holding on to Ao for a long time, waiting for a chance to pull him back into her life. And I guess she finally saw her opening. Linda felt a wave of nausea wash over her, the reality of Tenny's manipulation sinking in. She could see it now, how Tenny orchestrated everything, playing on her weaknesses, manipulating Chris, and using her loneliness to sabotage her marriage. "So, she was waiting for me to mess up?" Linda whispered, more to herself than to Tundai. Tundai's gaze softened slightly, though his tone remained firm. "I don't know, Linda, but it seems like she took advantage of the situation, and Ayo's hurt deeply. I don't know if he'll ever come back from this." Linda stared down at her hands, her heart heavy with the painful truth. She had walked into a trap she hadn't even seen coming, and now she was left with nothing but shattered pieces and the knowledge that she had been played. After a long silence, she looked up at Tundai, her eyes filled with a newfound determination. "Thank you, Tundai. I know I can't change what's happened, but I need to know the truth." Tundai nodded, his expression unreadable. I just hope, whatever you're planning, you don't make things worse. Io deserves peace. Linda nodded, though she knew that her next steps wouldn't be easy. She was left with a painful realization that she had been used in a game far larger than she'd understood. And the only way to move forward was to confront her own mistakes and decide what, if anything, could be salvaged from the ruins of her life. With a heavy heart, Linda left the cafe, her mind set on uncovering the full extent of Tenny's plan, even if it meant facing the depths of her own complicity in the unraveling of her marriage. Linda's mind is ablaze as she leaves the cafe after her talk with Tundai. Her heart races with the urgency of her need for answers, her need for closure. She knows Tenny's manipulation was at the heart of her marital downfall, and now she has to confront the woman who so skillfully plotted against her. Linda finds Tenny's social media profile and tracks her down to a trendy cafe, the same one where she knows Tenny frequents for her brunch posts. The cafe is bustling, but Tenny sits near the window, sipping on an iced coffee, her demeanor as carefree as her Instagram posts. Linda approaches her, trying to control the fire within her. Linda, firmly, "Tenny?" Tenny looks up, surprised but with a slight smirk, recognizing Linda immediately. She sits up straighter, crossing her arms. "Tenny, Linda, didn't expect to see you here. I assume you have questions?" Linda, sitting down, eyes blazing. "Cut the act, Tenny. I know what you did. You orchestrated everything. You used Chris, you used me, and you tore apart my marriage." Tenny leans back, unfazed by Linda's accusation, a sly smile spreading across her face. "Tenny, Linda, let's be real. Your marriage didn't need much help falling apart. All I did was give it a little push." Linda's jaw clenches, her hands gripping the table. She refuses to let Tenny get to her. "Linda, why? What did you get out of all this? Was it worth it to hurt Ao like that?" Tenny lets out a low, humorless laugh. "Tenny, oh please. Ao and I have history, a history that would have never ended if it weren't for you. You stole him from me, and as for Christine, he deserves to know who his real family is." Linda's face pales at the coldness in Tenny's words, but she holds her ground. "Linda, you're lying to yourself, Tenny. Ao moved on with me because he loves me, but manipulating Chris, paying him to seduce me, that was low even for you." Tenny's expression hardens as she finally drops her pretense. "Tenny, don't pretend like you didn't play a part in it. You were ready for someone to see you the way Chris did. You were so lonely, so desperate for validation. It was almost too easy." Linda feels the sting of Tenny's words, knowing there's a painful grain of truth in them, but she shakes it off. "I may have made mistakes, but you planned this. You preyed on my vulnerabilities, and for what? Because you couldn't handle seeing Ao happy?" Tenny's eyes flash with anger as she leans forward, her voice a low hiss. "Tenny, yes, because Ao and I were supposed to be together. I've waited years, Linda. I waited for you to slip up, for him to see what he was missing. And now, he has." Linda stares at Tenny, the reality of her words settling in. She realizes there's no remorse in Tenny, no regret, only a twisted sense of entitlement. "Linda, and what if he finds out? What if he learns the truth about you, about how you manipulated everyone just to pull him back into your life?" Tenny's smirk returns, her confidence unshaken. "Tenny, do you think he'll believe you over me? After everything you've done, everything he's seen? You're nothing to him now, Linda. He's moved on, and he's with his real family." Linda takes a deep breath, the weight of Tenny's words pressing down on her, but she stands, her resolve unbroken. "Linda, we'll see, Tenny. The truth has a way of coming out, and when it does, I hope you're ready for the consequences." Linda walks away, leaving Tenny at the table, a flicker of uncertainty flashing across Tenny's face as Linda's final words echo in her mind. Ao sits alone in his apartment, the shadows of dusk casting long lines across the floor as the evening deepens. His mind is restless, tangled in the events of the past weeks. He can't shake the feeling that something's been off, a feeling that's only intensified since his recent conversations with Tenny. Christine's photo still sits on the coffee table, staring up at him, a reminder of the life he thought he knew and the future he's still trying to make sense of. He picks up the photo and studies the boy's face, searching for traces of himself. The image is comforting, yet unsettling. So, hospital scene. A couple of weeks ago, he visited the DTI clinic with baby Christian. As he sat at the reception waiting to be attended to, he kept on thinking to himself, how did I manage to impregnate Tiniola without even knowing? She must have felt bad raising him all by herself. I still can't believe I almost ruined Christian's opportunity of bonding with his biological father, all because of work. I really need to do better. Maybe if I had listened to Linda, all this wouldn't have happened. Just last few weeks, my life has been perfect. I can't keep living life like this. If this results turns out positive, I have to be a responsible father. The in-house nurse walked toward him and directed him into the doctor office in-house doctor, smiling professionally. Don't worry, Mr. Johnson, the results will be thorough, but it may take about 2 months due to high demand. But you have nothing to worry about. Thank you, Ayo replied. Just let me know as soon as it's ready. Simisola paced her small living room, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. Her expression, tense and uncertain, was carefully rehearsed. She glanced at the clock, waiting for Teniola's signal. Tenny was sitting in her dimly lit apartment, the pistol on the table before her. Her smirk widened as she dialed Ayo number. Are you ready for this? Tenny's voice was calm, dripping with anticipation. Simisola nodded. Let's get this over with. Remember, make it convincing, Tenny instructed, her tone sharp. Ayo needs to believe every word. Ayo answered after a few rings, his voice cautious. Hello. Ayo, it's Simisola, she said, her voice trembling. I need to tell you something. Something important. It's about Linda and Tenny. There was a pause just long enough for Simisola to hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Simisola? What's going on? Ayo's voice was tense, and she could imagine his face tightening with suspicion. You need to know the truth, she continued, pacing the room. Linda has been lying to you about everything. Wait, slow down, Ayo interrupted. What are you talking about? Simisola opened her mouth to respond, but at that moment, Tiniola burst into her apartment. What are you doing here, Linda? Tenny's voice rang out, loud enough for Ayo to hear through the phone. Simisola turned to face her, feigning surprise and fear. You're going too far, Linda. This isn't right, Simisola shouted, playing her part with trembling hands. Ayo deserves to know the truth. On the other end of the line, Ayo's voice crackled with panic. Simisola? What's going on? Without a word, Tenny picked up the pistol and aimed it toward the ceiling. The gunshot echoed through the room, making Simisola flinch dramatically. Plaster rained down and the room filled with smoke. Simisola! Ayo shouted. Are you okay? Simisola scrambled for the phone, letting her breath hitch as she picked it up. Ayo, I'm fine, she said shakily, tears welling in her eyes for effect. The call ended abruptly, leaving Ayo shouting into the void. As soon as the call disconnected, Simisola's frightened expression melted into a grin. Tenny turned to her, a gleam of satisfaction in her eyes. For a moment, the room was silent. Then both women burst into laughter. Simisola sank onto the couch, shaking her head. Did you hear his voice? He sounded like he was going to have a heart attack. Tenny twirled the pistol in her hand, her smirk widening. He's so predictable, always the hero, always ready to believe the worst. Simisola leaned forward, still chuckling. And the gunshot? Perfect touch. He probably thinks I'm tied up or something. Tenny walked to the window, looking out into the dark night. Men like Ayo think they can control everything, but in the end, we're always 2 steps ahead. Simisola nodded, her laughter fading into a sly smile. So, what's next? Tenny turned back to her, her eyes glinting with malice. Now? Now we wait. Let him stew in his confusion. The more desperate he gets, the easier it'll be to pull the final string.